Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Denise Gary Show. Did you notice last night, if you watched the presidential debates among the Democrats, that not a single presidential candidate among the Democrats mentioned that employment is up and over what it has been in the last 50 years? Did you notice that nobody noticed that the amount of food stamps used in the state of California and across the country was way down? Did you notice that nobody mentioned that the unemployment rate here in the United States is basically what is referred to as full employment, because unemployment is down to approximately 3%. If anybody wanted to get a job in the United States, they could get a job if they had the proper training and the understanding of how to do it. And of course, they never mentioned the opportunity zones which President Trump had set up so that companies that had a lot of money would invest in neighborhoods and communities that were extremely poor in order to lift up those communities out of poverty. Communities, the kinds of communities that our representatives refuse to talk about. But again, Kamala Harris never discussed homelessness in California, never talked about the opportunity zones and what corporations could do in this state alone to bring about the kind of change we need. And I noticed that in addition to not mentioning how well the economy is doing, the number of jobs available, I noticed that they also didn't mention that thanks to the president, the amount of illegal immigration has begun to drop because President Donald J. Trump worked with and negotiated, has his people negotiate with the government of Mexico and the president of Mexico to get their cooperation finally into slowing down the influx of people that would come here and break our laws and overwhelm our infrastructure and what we're able to provide people in a lawful way when they come here. So I noticed that none of that was talked about. Not that I watched every minute of it. I could hardly bear it. The biggest topic in my mind seemed to be about how they wanted to insult the current president that's done so much to put people of color back to work and provide them jobs so they could take care of their families. But I thought another thing was interesting that I wanted to talk to you about today is, did you notice that the presidential frontrunners, that all of them supported unlimited elective abortion? I thought that was interesting. And also, did you notice that in supporting unlimited elective abortion, elective means you don't have to have it. Elective abortion means the life of the mother is not in danger. Elective abortion means that they just want to have an abortion because that baby's inconvenient, rather than carry the baby to full term and put that baby up for adoption. Rather than doing that, they just kill the baby. So elective abortions mean people just want to have their infant that's growing inside them killed. So I thought that was interesting. And I thought it was also interesting that Kamala Harris unveiled her version of Medicare for all. And like most of the presidential contenders there on the left, the hardcore liberals and socialists, they all believe that abortion should be covered, which is interesting to me because some of us in America don't support abortion. In fact, I'd say it's actually over 50% of the American population that doesn't support elective abortion. I think some people can understand it if you've been raped or there's incest. Obviously, of course, if the mother's life's in danger, you can have it taken care of immediately. You don't have to wait several months until the baby can begin to have the horrible sensation of pain. I can't imagine the pain a growing infant inside a mother experiences by month 5. So I think most people know, if you've been raped and you've suffered rape, pretty quick. A doctor can tell you pretty quickly that things can be done immediately to prevent a pregnancy. But I thought it was interesting that, for example, take men. Take a 20-year-old young man. If he's forced to have Medicare, then he's forced to pay for somebody's abortion. That a man can never get pregnant. Young men that are single can't get pregnant. Nobody can get pregnant that's a male, not even a transgender male, right? So somebody that's a girl that becomes a man, right? They've gone through the surgical process. If they've gone through all of the surgical processes necessary to make a woman a transgender man, well, then they can't get pregnant either. So I thought it was incredible. And then, of course, the cost of it. The cost of it is tremendous. And I thought back about a vignette that I had done, and I want you to see it. It's up on my website, Strategic Solutions for a New Middle East. But before we play that clip, what I thought was fascinating as a point I just made, that Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, that I did not hear, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can say something up there on Facebook, but I did not hear anybody use the word abortion. They called abortion reproductive health care. Let's talk about that for a minute. How is abortion reproductive health care? Doesn't that term in and of itself suggest healing, suggest health? So using reproductive health care suggests a premise with an underlying flaw, an underlying lie, because reproductive health care doesn't suggest killing an unborn or unwanted child. Reproductive health care suggests healing. I want you to hear this clip of Kamala Harris from last night.
You made a decision for years to withhold resources to poor women to have access to reproductive health care, and including women who were the victims of rape and incest. And I personally prosecuted rape.
So the underlying principle of reproductive health care is false. And I just thought that was incredible, but also intelligent of her, because, of course, there are plenty of people in the audience that's not going to think past their nose. I mean, I don't even know if they'd understand that to mean abortion. I guess a few of them, or maybe most of them, would understand that. But isn't it something how people like Kamala Harris, that people on the left, Democrats, liberals, socialists, communists, will refer to the killing of an unborn child as reproductive health care. And I want you to listen to a clip. Again, this is on my website, Strategic Solutions for a New Middle East. Or actually, you could go to my website using the terms A New Middle East, A New Middle East. And on there, I talked about the depravity that also exists, not just in the Western world with respect to abortion and killing an unborn child, but which, of course, also has led many Democrats in various states to support infanticide as well. You know what infanticide is, right? When you take a baby that was aborted, that was supposed to be killed through the abortion process, and you just set that baby aside on a table to die. And within about 24 hours, without any care, supposedly, that botched abortion, that baby that survived the abortion, will die. Supposedly. Well, of course, in Islamic societies, we know that if you violate Sharia law, You can be 12 years old and be dragged outside of your home and stoned to death, right? You know that. You're familiar, I'm sure, with stonings and beheadings and crucifixions in the Islamic world. And I talk about in this clip how Islamic societies that embrace Islamic law or Sharia law celebrate a culture of death. They, for example, groups like Al-Qaeda. That was incredible, by the way. Did you catch that? One of the twits up there on the platform said that President Trump was supporting Al-Qaeda. Now, Obama supported Al-Qaeda. Hillary Clinton supported Al-Qaeda and actually sold them weapons from Benghazi, Libya, to Al-Qaeda in Syria, which, of course, ultimately led to the death of 4 Americans who got caught in the crossfire between competing terrorist groups in Libya and what was going on in Syria. But at any rate, Obama and Clinton, while supporting Al-Qaeda and the Muslim Brotherhood, Donald J. Trump, as President of the United States, has been trying to kill them off, right? Because Al-Qaeda declared war on the United States of America. So President Trump has been trying to win the war against Islamic terrorism, whereas Obama and Clinton have, of course, supported the war on America and the war on the Western world. And of course, as you know, in the Quran, it talks about the jihad against infidels. That's talked about several times in several passages, over 100, nearly 200 passages in the Quran speak to how Muslims are supposed to commit jihad against non-Muslims or infidels. It's called jihad or holy war. Westerners, we call this terrorism, and terrorists are reputed as barbarians because, according to, generally speaking, most Westerners who define terrorism as the random and indiscriminate killing of innocent civilians for a religious or political objective. Isn't that why girls are stoned to death? Isn't that why women are stoned to death? Isn't that why some men are stoned to death? Because they violated Sharia law. So I want you to hear this clip because it talks about the glorification of death in the Islamic world. And I asked the question, here in the West, we're supposed to be a modern civilized society, and yet over 51 million infants since, I believe it's 1973, when the Supreme Court, remember the Supreme Court in Roe versus Wade, made it legal to have abortions in America. And so over 51 million infants have been murdered in America. So talking about civilized societies, let's listen to this clip from my website, anewmiddleeast.com.
This is of international note, and I am Denice on the Middle East of the Denice Gary Panel Show.
Celebrating a culture of death, Islamic societies embrace Allah's commands for jihad against infidels, a holy war to spread Islamic supremacism, a tenet of faith found multiple times within the pages of the Quran. Here in the West, we call this terrorism. All terrorists themselves are repudiated as barbarians, and the world stands witness to the glorification of death for other causes. The religious police, or Muslim mobs in Muslim-dominant countries, have historically taken people out into the streets for public beheadings, stonings, and floggings. Those who violate the tenets of the Muslim holy book must pay for their sins under Sharia law. But here in the West, civilized societies value life, or do they? Despite a Western culture rooted in a Judeo-Christian belief system that holds firm to the idea that all lives matter, the Democrats have denied this rich American heritage. Presidential candidate Clinton has made clear that millions of Americans must change their deeply held views concerning abortion. Stand against Clinton, the barbaric practice of savagely murdering approximately 1.3 million defenseless, innocent souls each year. Indeed, over 50 million infants have been killed since 1973. Scientific evidence shows that infants in the womb suffer excruciating pain due to developing nerve endings. The brutality the unborn must bear resulting from an abortion process has yet to be told. But Clinton and the left in America... So, ladies and gentlemen, I produced this back in 2015. This is when Hillary Clinton was in the process of campaigning for president. And in this vignette, again, you can go to my website, anewmiddleeast.com, and I asked the question, how can a civilized society, how can Western societies allow this kind of barbarism to occur at taxpayer expense? Remember, when Hillary Clinton was running, just like Democrat presidential candidates today in 2019, they trotted out for public consumption the idea that this should be paid for by the taxpayers. And again, I thought it was interesting that at that time, it was going to cost, according to what was discussed in the debates in 2015, the Democrats were committed to $8 billion of your taxpayer dollars, $8 billion taxpayer dollars to subsidize abortion through Obamacare. Remember that? Nancy Pelosi was very proud of that. That's Obama's legacy. That was President Obama and the Obama-Clinton White House legacy, that under Obamacare, all of us would have to pay for other people to have an abortion to the tune of $8 billion a year. And so many middle-class families just couldn't afford Obamacare because it was so expensive. And mothers that wanted to stay home and care for their children, many of them had to go out and get a job while they were already had a job, full-time job as a wife and mother, and maybe actively being involved in also helping their children with school. I know mothers that were involved in homeschooling that couldn't just be involved in homeschooling and helping their children. They had to go to work. I thought it was interesting that a bill was introduced by Republicans called Life at Conception Act. It never was passed, but Life at Conception Act needs to be passed. It was reintroduced this year in 2019. It needs to get passed. I want to give out Congress's number, 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121. I want you to think about the fact that if one of these Democrats win, which I don't believe they will, but if they do, it's going to cost the taxpayers, every family in America that's paying taxes, it's going to increase your taxes by approximately $10,000. They're going to have to really up the income tax in America, because if we're going to have Medicare for all that includes paying for the health care of everyone, including illegal immigrants, which they all seem to support, right? That's what they talked about. Our income taxes will have to be raised, and it'll be a lot more homeless people out there on the street because they're not going to be able to afford their rent or their mortgage payment. And speaking of uncivilized societies, which I think in the Western world, there are certainly a segment of the American people and people in Europe, Westerners, that embrace what I believe is an uncivilized practice, because there's always a long line of people waiting to adopt infants. I don't know if you are aware of that, but it's true. There are people all over America. There are people around the world that would love to adopt a newborn, and people are standing in line to do that. And they pay attorneys a lot of money to go through the process of finding and adopting a newborn child. But I wanted you to also, you've heard my clip. I wanted you to hear this brief clip from a documentary that was done about the dying rooms in China. You know, little girls and infants are placed in these dying rooms. They literally tie up these little girls because, of course, female children are not wanted like male children are in China. Now, I bring this to your attention because I think of ideologies like socialism, where a bureaucrat's going to control whether or not you can have surgery, or whether or not you can get a prescription drug, or whether or not you could have a procedure. Think about it. Under socialism, under forced Medicare for all, right? Which is what Kamala Harris has called for. It's what the Democrats have called for. Medicare for all. So if you're going to have a bureaucrat decide whether or not you can have a drug that you think you need, a prescription medicine that you believe you need, or again, as I said, surgery or surgical procedure, if you've got to wait for some bureaucrat to okay it, you might be in a lot of trouble health-wise. And I think about socialism and communism. In socialist countries and communist countries, we see these kinds of things. I've been to Romania. I've seen those orphanages. They're like the dying rooms of China. Take a look at this.
With the punishment for non-compliance this severe, many births are hidden from the authorities. This leads to many newborn babies being abandoned. If they're found, they're taken to the nearest state orphanage. We knew from previous trips to China that because the unwanted children bring shame to the country, these institutions are very difficult to find. Even our local drivers could do no more than ask the way time and
I see that. It makes me want to just break down and cry. To think that children are abandoned like they were in Romania and other communist countries because these human beings are unwanted. I think it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. If you're interested in adopting, if you want another child, there are orphanages in China where children are dying because nobody wants them. What an opportunity. I recommend that many of you go to these dying rooms in these communist countries, in socialist countries. See what it's like to live under socialism or communism. Take a look at what they do to human beings, to children, to toddlers, to infants. Check it out. I have. It's uncivilized. And if you vote for a Democrat, and if we get Democrats that are in charge of both houses of Congress in 2020, the kind of barbarism, think about it, 51 million Americans, over 51 million Americans didn't die because of a war. They didn't die out because they were in a car accident. They died because their mother couldn't be bothered to carry that baby to full term and put that baby up for adoption. Those over 51 million Americans were killed through abortion. What the Democrats today are trying to doctor up and flower up with a term called reproductive health care. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to talk about Sculpt 365. It's the best gym in town, and it's locally owned and operated by a Navy veteran, Craig Jansen. And I want to share with you, it's got the state-of-the-art cardio equipment, elliptical machines, treadmills, bikes, strength training with free weights, all the amenities necessary to basically reach your fitness goals. And this is, I believe, so important. They've got classes with dancing, all kinds of aerobic opportunities. This is just a fabulous gem. Sign up at Sculpt 365 Fitness. They have 3 locations. They have one location in the Northwest at Brimhall and Callaway. They've got another location. They're in the Oildale area on Chester Avenue. They have a 3rd location in Tehachapi on Sage Lane. Go to their website, Sculpt 365 Fitness, and check it out and give them a call. Also, I want to bring your attention to Frugatti's Italian restaurant. The food there is fabulous. Again, once again, it seems like each and every year they get the best. The rating for best Italian restaurant in all of Kern County. This is Frugatti's restaurant right there on Coffee Road between Truxton and Stockdale Highway in Bakersfield, California. Everything is made with all natural ingredients. They freshly bake their own bread, their desserts. It's just fabulous. Go check it out, Frugatti's Restaurant. I'll be there tomorrow night. Come say hello. Say hello to the owner, Ralph Frugaletti from Italy, cooking Italian food. And say hello to Denice from the Denice Gary Show. And listen to the Anatase Products commercial. This is so important. If you're working for a DoD contractor, you want to tell them all about Anatase Products. Again, locally owned operation here in Kern County. Scott Baker is the president. Wonderful man. Check out the Anatase Products with this next commercial.
Right here in East Kern. Anatase Products is a forward-leaning manufacturer and distributor of hardware sold to major defense and aerospace companies. We're talking about Boeing, Lockheed Martin, United Technologies, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon General Electric, and on the list goes. As well as to every United States ally worldwide, including Israel, America's most important strategic ally in the Middle East. And for everything that flies, Anatase Products is providing the parts. And with me today is the president of Anatase Products, Scott Baker. Hi, Scott.
How you doing?
Scott, tell us why you believe this corner of Kern County is the hub of the aerospace industry.
Well, this portion of Southern California here out in the Antelope Valley, it contains, some of the most cutting edge technology going on in aviation today. We have some of the UCAS programs with unmanned technologies going on. We have Edwards Air Force Base out here who's doing continual testing in their area. We have the Naval Weapons Station up there at China Lake doing some fantastic cutting edge stuff, cruise missile technology, and those things are going on. We have Scale Composites locally doing a lot of composite technology, which is new. We have SpaceX, which is a private one putting a private entity putting things into space now. This area is the growth center for aviation's future, and this is the area I think that as a nation we need to be concentrating some of our effort and taking this technology. And as we all know, with the space program from Apollo years ago, out of these technologies, we the private sector are going to reap some of the benefits of that.
Thank you, Scott. Ladies and gentlemen, Scott Baker, president of Anatase Products. Anatase Products, located in the beautiful mountains of Tehachapi, California, in eastern Kern County, is home to some of the most innovative and specialized technologies in the world, including those at the U.S. Naval Air Warfare Center, Weapons Division at China Lake, Edwards Air Force Base, as well as Strata Launch, launching satellites capable of delivering multiple orbits in a single flight to space. And it is Anatase Products that has provided the manufactured devices, and the president, Scott Baker of Anatase Products, Marine Corps veteran, reactivated on 9/11 to monitor threats to the homeland, is carrying on a tradition of providing for the security of the United States by manufacturing every kind of fastener on anything that flies, as well as providing a full testing destructive laboratory. Contact Anatase Products, now in business for 30 years, at 661-822-6873. Located at 1314 Goodrich Drive in Tehachapi for your manufacturing and testing needs today.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to the Denice Gary Show. Of course, we need contributions. I ask all of you to go to my website, a secure, very secure website. Make a contribution there on PayPal. All contributions are tax deductible to the Middle East Initiative, or you can send a check or money order to the Middle East Initiative. That's my 501c3. Send it to Post Office Box, P.O. Box 82162, Bakersfield, California, 93380. Thank you so much. It's so needed. Again, thank you for listening to the Denice Gary Show. This is Denice signing off.